effort dedicated to developing the next generation of business successes in the Treasure Valley. There are note cards on your table that we'd encourage you to use as you would like to submit questions, and we'll be walking around throughout the event and picking them up and giving them to our fantastic moderator. I'd like to welcome our distinguished guests who are lending their expertise for today's presentation. Marilyn Whitney, Senior Special Assistant for Education and Government Services, who will moderate our panel later in the program. Our panelists today, Superintendent of Marsing School District Norm Stewart and Representative Julie Van Orden. Kicking off today's event is Dr. Paul Hill, a research professor at the University of Washington, Bothell, and former director of the Center of Reinventing Public Education, which studies alternative governance and finance systems for public K-12 education. He is an accomplished author, recipient of the Thomas B. Fordham Prize for Distinguished Scholarship, and chairs the ROCI Task Force. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Paul Hill.
Thank you. It's good to see a lot of you back. Some of you that attended the webinar we did last year that was based on just a review of what was written about experiences of the 4-day week in other states. And as a result of that, ROCI decided to look more deeply into what was happening in Idaho. And we did a bunch of interviews in 20 school districts that have either adopted or were considering adopting the 4-day week. We asked them about 5 topics. One, how's it affected your spending? Because a lot of people adopted 4-day week initially hoping to save money. Second, how's it changed the student's experience? Third, how's it changed the work of teachers and administrators? Fourth, how do neighbors and parents respond to it? And finally, what do you know about student outcomes? And I'm going to give a very brief summary of the findings here, and they're all but my verbal excesses are present in the little paper. So first of all, on spending, we found in Idaho, as in most places in other states, that a lot of localities were motivated to save money. They had a very hard time saving. And it's a complicated matter, but part of it is that the premise has been that teachers will work 5 days a week, so their compensation isn't changed, and so the money has to be saved out of a very small fraction of the whole budget. And sometimes the things that have to be done to make the 4-day week work, for example, keeping some facilities open for the kids to come in and practice, they create offsetting costs. And so basically, it isn't like nobody's ever saved money, but few localities do. And one thing we don't say in the paper, but I do want to put in your heads, is that if money is the whole reason, there are lots of other ways to save that much money. That is the tiny amount you can't save. And ROCI actually has some resources about that. Secondly, on student experience, students now go 4 days a week. They're expected to do assignments or enrichment activity the 5th day. And the 4 days are generally made, so each of them longer, by something like between 60 and 90 minutes. And in truth, as we looked into how the students experience, it's a very picture. Well, first of all, between high school and elementary school. High school kids can pretty much cope with a longer day, and though teachers have had trouble adjusting their teaching to the longer day, there's every reason to think that especially high school kids on grade level, kids who are college bound and so on, were getting a lot out of the extra time in the days they were present in school. A lot more problematic at the elementary level. Having to do with fatigue and just the length of the day and the need to stop and feed kids and give them rest, and so that a lot of people are struggling with that aspect of upgrading the experience for elementary kids. And I know there will be some solutions to it, but that's what we found overall. And we also found a difference by the perception of a lot of superintendents we talked to about the kids that were relatively privileged, especially those in college graduate families and families that had college aspirations, as compared to the disadvantaged and low-income kids. in general, one thing we know is that disadvantaged kids, the new Hispanics who settled out, poor kids, they depend much more on schooling than more advantaged kids. And so, as particularly if schooling time isn't used well, or if there are little kids that are too tired, a lot of people, superintendents, are concerned about whether those kids lose, even though more advantaged kids don't lose. And the other thing we found over and over again is, with a few exceptions, the idea of the 5th day, which would be enrichment, online, learning things, having discussions, doing informative site visits, things like that, that was seldom realized. There were good things done on 5th days, but often maybe we looked too soon. Often they were just getting organized. It mattered a lot about the size and centralization of the community we looked at. A larger community with lots of nonprofits and churches could do a lot more things than one that almost had no institutions. And so, only one. Implications for teachers and administrators. Well, for superintendents, they work 24/7. They're just working in a different way. It was hard for them to sell it. It was most of them, I think, took it on as something they thought they had to do and thought was probably be good in the long run. It was a lot of work for them. For teachers, it certainly involved changes in the way teachers work. And one thing we found is only one of the localities that we talked to had done any previous teacher training about how to cope with the longer days and so on. And basically, there was a lot of hope that at some point teachers would figure out how to use the time. And there may be, in fact, in places we look at, 5 years from now, if we look back, teachers might have found out how to do it, but it isn't like they know. And there were real concerns on the part of teachers and also their administrators about whether time was being used efficiently. And teachers also, in some places, complained about two things. One of them, those long days are tough, they wear them out. And the other is that, by some testimony, in some places, I think particularly little kids, a 3-day weekend is a lot different than a 2-day weekend. It's more like Christmas break and very hard to get it going. Now, again, that's not universal, but it's an issue. The one thing that's clear is that though some teachers found it challenging and tiring and so on, the 5th day was highly welcome, both because of professional activities and because they had free time. And they could do the things that, take the kids to the doctor and the like. And so it is increasingly popular among teachers. And interestingly, what we found was some localities where they might have entered the thought about a 4-day week on the basis of saving cost, we're now starting to see it as something they had to do in order to be competitive in the labor market. This teacher wanted to work that way. And I'll just flag something for the discussion. We did see a number of localities that seriously engaged teachers from the beginning about what it means about 5-day week, 4-day weeks being teacher absences are too costly. You have to minimize those. We can't have show and tell and movies and things in the 4-day week. We have to focus, and sometimes even we have to give assignments for the 5th day, and then we have to read them and get them back. And teachers that were involved in these conversations were committed, but there was concern that the next bunch of teachers that come in just weren't involved in those conversations, and so there was some fear about an erosion of the determination of the time. Parents and neighbors, of course, every community, even the tiniest one, has factions, and there are very happy parents and parents who know their kids are benefiting. And they're usually the most local parents that are the ones that have the ear of the school board and the like. At the community levels, responses varied, as I said already before. Communities that had churches and so on had more capacity to help. And interestingly, when that happened, when the churches or community groups or whatever would move in to pick up some of the time vacated by the schools to provide programs that help their kids. But nobody resented that. They understood that costs were being shifted. And one thing we found very interesting is that, talking about parents and the like, is that in some communities, the 4-day week is sort of remodeled community life. The businesses and everything else now operate on a schedule that takes account of that. And what's interesting is that in some ways it's perfectly clear, but it's not so clear yet how 4-day week in most places will affect students and so on as I described. It's perfectly clear in a lot of places. It's a major amenity for the community. Now whether that is at the cost of something for kids, I think it's to be determined. On the question of student learning, almost everybody said their average scores haven't gone down. Almost nobody has disaggregated the scores to say, what about elementary, what about high school, what about versus high school kids, what about the kids, the poor kids, what about the kids in the new development that's called Hispanics. There wasn't a lot of people who were just looking at average scores, and those can reflect a lot of things. So there wasn't a lot of caretaking about especially looking at the consequences for the kids that are most likely to be at risk from a change like this. Basically, we start with an analysis, we end with an analysis. We have seen, not only in this project, but other projects, a lot of very good 4-day schools. And there are a lot of schools that are built to be 4 days from the beginning. So the whole thing is imprinted that way. And those are often, they're privileged schools. A lot of private schools are that way. Increasingly, charter schools are using blended learning. They even do less than 4 days. But they're kind of engineered from the beginning to do this. And to move into it from a different model is a different story. And we see the advantages and pitfalls. And I know Norm here has seen advantages, and I'm not going to second guess them because we know that they can be had. But you can't get them by backing into it. And so I want to put my slide up. These are questions that I don't want to necessarily discuss here, but leave with people in localities, whether they have adopted 4-day or are thinking about it. A lot of times, the way community politics goes, you get some kind of scheme on an idea, and everybody agrees, maybe for different reasons. Nobody quite agrees on why, but everybody agrees on they should do it. And so a lot of times it wasn't clear what would success mean, what would failure mean. Similarly in education, too often, I feel as a political scientist, communities don't leave themselves a way to back down to say, what if this doesn't work? What do we expect? What if we saw it and make us say it was a failure? Nobody did that, and so I'm really urging people to think this through and to keep some flexibility. Clearly, there's a need for some serious onboarding conversations with especially new teachers who weren't involved in these earlier conversations. Very important to ask questions about the kids whose parents aren't going to tell you how happy they are. They're not going to tell you anything. The disadvantaged kids. And then finally, if I could advise a locality that was thinking about this and might want to do it for lots of reasons, I would say make sure you don't make it impossible to go back to 5-day. If you find out it's not working for your kids, and this could be very difficult to do, you can easily imagine that you might have to compensate teachers to go back to the 5-day week. So it may be financially impossible to do unless you work it all out together. And anybody would like to work further on this, Mary Beth Blackbark is here, and I'm hoping that she will be a resource in the future. How about that for snagging it?
Hey, Paul,
Yeah.
would you just talk through what you mean by the question number 5?
It is how do we make sure that as teachers and parents who are not involved in the original discussion come along, that they don't start adopting habits that the original people I promised they wouldn't. And there are big issues here about, everybody knows who's had any kind of discussion about this seriously in the locality. Teacher absences are tough. You can't take all your sick days, and yet the new people come in without those expectations, and that's what I mean. So the nice thing is the people on the panel have different perspectives on this, and Norm, I think, has actually done it right, so it'll be good to hear from you.
Thank you, Paul. Next, I'd like to welcome Marilyn Whitney, who will be leading what is sure to be an interesting panel discussion. Marilyn serves on Governor Otter's staff, handling education issues, as well as working with the Departments of Administration, Commerce, and Labor. Prior to joining the governor's office, she was Chief Communications and Legislative Affairs Officer for the Idaho State Board of Education, where she supported the work of the Task Force for Improving Education. Marilyn is an Idaho native, born and raised in Twin Falls. She earned a bachelor's in business administration and a master's degree in education from Boise State University. Please help me in welcoming Marilyn.
Well, thank you, Amanda, and I appreciated the invitation to be here today and get to engage in this discussion about this topic. Because we've certainly seen a shift in a lot of the schools in Idaho toward these 4-day weeks. I will say, just a disclaimer, that was not a recommendation of the Governor's Task Force for Improving Education. With that, I want to introduce the other two panelists. Representative Julie Van Orden has been involved in agriculture her whole life. She grew up on a potato wheat farm and is currently the co-owner of a farm with her husband where they raise Idaho potatoes and soft white wheat. Julie also was previously the owner of the Gymnastics Gymnasium, managing the office, working with coaches to organize competitive events. She's also a founding member of the Blackfoot Mayor's Youth Coalition, Bingham County Youth Coalition. Julie is currently a member of the Idaho Legislature, serving in the House of Representatives. She is the Vice Chairman for the Education Committee, serves on the Agriculture Committee, Resources and Conservation Committee, and she was previously on the Commerce and Human Resources Committee. Norm Stewart is Superintendent of Marsing School District. Norm has worked his entire academic career in 4-day week districts. He worked for the Echo School District in Echo, Oregon from 1998 to 2012 as a teacher and K-12 principal. Norm moved to Idaho in 2012 and was initially hired as the secondary principal of the Marsing District, supervising both the middle and the high school buildings. He became superintendent of the Marsing District during the 2013-14 school year and is still serving in that capacity. Norm has also coached high school athletics for 23 years, with 21 of those years in 4-day school week districts. He's familiar with both the academic and athletic aspects of the 4-day school week. So we have an expert and a policymaker, and obviously Dr. Hill, who's an expert on this as well. So we're just going to dive into questions. We're going to go through some questions and get their perspectives on these things, and then we want you to ask them questions as well. So we'll start with an easy question, and we're going to want all of your perspectives on this. Dr. Hill alluded to this a little bit, but how do you measure the impact on students and families of a shift to a 4-day week? And we'll go ahead and let Norm start.
So I guess ultimately for us, number one, I'm not an expert in the 4-day school week. All I can do is ultimately tell you about the experiences that I've had within my career and the school districts that I've been associated with, which have been 4-day school weeks.
In the land of the blind, the blind man's kid.
Well, ultimately, as far as getting people to understand the successes, can you repeat the question?
Well, how do you measure the impact? And how do you know that students in a 4-day school week are achieving and are reaching their potential the same as if they were in a 5-day school week?
Well, ultimately, we're constantly assessing all of our aspects within academics, as far as within our school system, using student assessment data, both state and local data, to try to determine whether students are being successful. We're really looking at the quality of instruction that we have as well. Are the teachers providing the quality of instruction that they need to help the students be successful? So we're continually trying to monitor that, whether we were on a 5-day school week or on a 4-day school week. We're also trying to determine that from interaction with our patrons, with our stakeholders within the community. We have interactions with them on a constant basis. We have those interactions, those personal interactions, discussing those aspects of the 4-day school week as well as other aspects. We also do an annual parent survey to try to determine whether the parents themselves and the community feel that we're being successful in regards to that. So using multiple different measures to determine not only the success or failure of a 4-day school week, but all aspects of our academic components within the school. So assessments as well as personal interactions for our school districts.
Representative, as a legislator, how will you look at the impact of a 4-day school week?
Thank you, Marilyn. When I guess I'm on this panel because I spoke up at the last meeting that they had. I was serving on a local school board as the chairman when our school district changed to a 4-day week. So I had a little bit to say when I was there. We did get a new superintendent in the meantime after we had changed, and he and I had a lot of discussions about the pros and cons of what was going on. He was not for it. He stepped into a district that was on a 4-day week, and so we had some pretty lively discussions about our 4-day week that we were on. How do we measure what's going on? And as a legislator, I would look to the State Department and the data that they collect. This is where data comes in becomes pretty important when we get to see schools that are on a 4-day week and how they're stacking up compared to 5-day weeks. You talked about how do you measure on your community too, and the parents. When we went to a 4-day week in our school district, we changed our kindergarten too, and we went to all day, every other day. So we had Monday, Wednesday, Tuesday, Thursday, because Friday was our day off. 2 years ago, the parents drove a change in our kindergarten because of they didn't feel like that was effective enough for their students, especially the kindergarten students. And so they came to our district, well, they went to the principal of our grade school and said, we'd like to see something different. So it had an impact on them, and they felt comfortable enough to come forward and to address it with not only their principal, but with the school board. And they ended up going to an extended kindergarten, and the parents pitched in, made all the arrangements for children to be picked up in the afternoon, and they all pitched in. So to me, that it kind of led to a lot of great community engagement and parents being empowered. So I think there are some real positives that can come, but I think that's how you measure. You stay in touch with your community and make sure that you're listening to what their concerns are.
One thing to add, I think what the mention of the State Department is really important. That really doing an analysis of student achievement scores over time when you brought an intervention like this in requires some serious looking, not just tracking the averages. You want to know whether the averages are rising more than in similar places elsewhere. And you could, one thing we know about tests is that on average district achievement score rates rise every year they use the same test. And so you could easily, I'm not saying I know the answer about what's actually happened, but you could easily miss a decline masked as an apparent slight increase if you didn't look at what's happening in other localities. And so that's the sort of thing the state can help with. And then I do strongly urge disaggregation, kind of overall mean scores will not tell you what's happening to the kids you most have to be concerned about.
All right. Dr. Hill, you talked about the impetus for most of this being driven by budgets and cost savings. Beyond that, what are some of the benefits of moving to a 4-day week in your mind, and then what are the major disadvantages?
Well, I will not go over it all again, but the benefits are potentially that teachers will get a chance to rethink their work and might come up with something a lot better, and that the 5th day could be used as a way for teachers to renorm one another, to design better approaches to instruction. So that there are, and there are some superintendents, even if they were a little disappointed with what happened, were convinced that was a big opportunity, and it probably still is. But of course that doesn't happen if it's not made to happen. And when we found that only one district even tried to operate in professional development, now I have to say, where would they get the professional development from? I don't know, but the idea that the potential benefit of professional work among teachers was going to be an automatic result of this opportunity. The world doesn't work that way, and it hasn't worked that way. So those are the big benefits. The disadvantages are the ones, potential disadvantages are the ones we're talking about. I have to say, I think in a lot of localities that we talk to, the college-bound older kids often benefit because of their parents nagging them to be on the internet and go to colleges and so on. But that's a whole different thing from the average kid that doesn't have that kind of support.
Yeah, representative in your district, what were the pros and cons?
In my district, there were, I don't know if you want to call us a district that did it wrong, but I certainly know that there was a lot of preparation that goes into this. And there is a lot of probably professional development that needs to go, that your teachers need to have before you go to a 4-day week. And there's a lot of training that needs to be done, a lot of probably PR with your community that needs to be done before you go into a 4-day week, because there's a way to do it right, and talk about backing into it or going forward into it is a big deal. We talk about that 5th day. We were just talking about that 5th day and what districts do. Our district used it for professional development days. I just talked with a charter school in my area that uses that Friday day. They're part of the teachers' and collaboration during that time. I did talk with Nova School District, and they use it for, basically it sounded like going through a professional learning communities plan, developing that, going through the steps of that. And it's worked out very well for them that way. The Abilene School District, I was just at one of their school board meetings this last month, and they did somewhat of a modified 4-day week. They do half day on Friday. And what they found, which was surprising to me, was that they had savings in the area of teacher substitutes, significant savings. And they felt like that was really a plus for them for a small school district. That was great on their budget. So there's a lot of things that people are doing with those Fridays. I think people have been pretty innovative and are using it very well.
Thank you. I would agree as far as there needs to be a lot of discussion before a school district decides to go with the 4-day school. I know that Marston School District had a number of community meetings to make sure that all stakeholders were as much in favor of it as possible before they made that decision. And I know a local school district that did the same thing. As far as the Homedale School District, we partnered with on quite a number of other activities. And so involving the community is very important. For us, the benefit of the 4-day week, it's a benefit to both the students and the staff. For us, we use those Fridays for professional development, an opportunity for collaboration, for us to align our curriculum We were in a position where we needed to make sure that we were getting aligned with Idaho core standards, and we were at a disadvantage when I first came into the district, or at least that's my feeling. And we've been able to use that